Hey friends, welcome back to the Real Herbalist podcast. In this podcast, I talk to real people who are joyfully working with herbs in their home. And I hope to demystify herbalism as something that's difficult or scary and remind you that you already are a natural born herbalist. It's your birthright to play with these plants, to connect with the earth, and to know how to craft your own medicines for yourself and your family at home. My name is Erinn McMurtry, and I'm a holistic health coach, a home herbalist, and an artist. And I'm excited to introduce you to some of my friends. Today, we're talking with Haylee. Yay! And she is a real herbalist. Haylee, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. So as I was thinking about this conversation, I realized that the herbs are actually what brought us together. So for those listening, I'll just share how Haylee and I know each other. I was hosting an event years ago and put it up on meetup.com to just find more people to have at the event. And I don't remember if we friended each other or how it works, but I just remember I saw your profile and it said herbal chocolatier. And I was like, dude, mixing chocolate and herbs? That's so cool. And so I believe I messaged you and I was like, dude, I love that you're an herbal chocolatier. I would love to hear more about what you do. And then I think we had a phone call or a Zoom call, and then you came to the event, and then we became great friends. And now we have all these mutual, beautiful friends and connections. And so I think that was back in 2013. So it's been almost 10 years. That's crazy.
Crazy. I know. I actually forgot about that was how we met. So cool.
Yeah. Beautiful. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and anything else that you would like to share with people.
Cool. So I'm an herbalist. I am more of on the practitioner path of a vital herbalist practitioner. I work with clients, and I'm also a chef and a nutritionist. I'm also an energy healer, medical intuitive. So I kind of just pull in a lot of these different trainings throughout the years to help guide people on how to heal themselves and teach different classes about herbalism, and then work with clients to help them get to a better space of health within themselves.
Yeah, it's been really cool and inspiring to see you step more and more into this work over the years that I've known you. I know when sort of early on, when we became close, you went to Vermont and stayed with Rosemary Gladstar and learned from her. For those of you that are new in the herbalism world or not, you probably definitely have heard of Rosemary Gladstar. And if you haven't, definitely go check her out, because she's an amazing wealth of information. And she's been a leader in the herbalism world for, I don't even know, probably since the 80s, maybe earlier.
However, I think in the 70s really was when she's kind of like the pioneer in bringing herbalism to the West, essentially. Wealth of knowledge for sure. The grandmother of herbalism is what she's referred to as.
Yeah. So amazing that you got to spend time with her. I remember when you were gone on that trip, and I was at a concert with some of our mutual friends, and they played that Rising Appalachia song, Medicine Woman. And all of our friends were like, Haylee, sending love to Haylee. And just we were just tapping into you. And I just remember feeling like, God, that's just so cool that you are so connected to the plants, that people see you as a medicine woman, that you're doing that you're there sitting with the plants and getting to know the plants. And I just remember feeling so inspired by that. And so I don't even really know if I've ever told you, but it's been really cool to see your journey. And it's definitely something that's inspired me to connect with the plants more and realize hey, that actually does feel really good. I want some of that too.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that, we all want that, right? I think that we are nature. We come from nature. I think we're just so far disconnected that we have become used to living in accordance to this made up false reality that is so far from our heart and from really how we are used to connecting. And what's the most important part about life is connecting to nature, So I'm glad that you felt inspired by that. And that's kind of the goal, right? Is to inspire more and more people to turn to the earth, to care for the earth, to connect to themselves more thoroughly through their connection to the earth. And then hopefully that will help to shift all of us into a higher vibration, essentially, or just, feeling more solid within ourselves and more connected to our souls.
Mm, yes, so much. Yes. And it's been so cool from my journey of creating my YouTube channel. I didn't initially start out wanting to talk about herbs necessarily, but I started doing some keyword research and looking at like what types of videos do people want that aren't being made that I can make. And I found this really big need for a lot of beginner herbalism content, not necessarily people wanting to be practitioners, but people wanting to just bring herbs into their home and not feel like they have to devote hours and hours of time or thousands and thousands of dollars to do that. And there wasn't really anybody like providing that. And so I started making videos because I saw that there was that need. And I've gotten just so many beautiful comments and people reaching out and like, thank you, this is what I've needed. And thank you for just making it like tangible for me. And it's just so cool to see how many people are truly wanting this and craving it. Just like you said, like we have forgotten, like so many of us have forgotten that this is our true nature and that our connection with the earth is something that truly is nourishing on a deep level, like a primal level that just doesn't come from doing other things. Like I haven't found any other way to that recreates that connection. So I'm just so excited to see that, to see the rise in that, and just to get to chat with people who are awakening to this desire within them. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I agree. I see such an increase in the interest in herbalism, especially in the last few years. It seems like it went from kind of, like the people who were maybe a little bit different than normal were into herbalism, kind of like the people who like maybe didn't quite socialize as easily. And to like, now it's like a trend. It's like everybody wants to understand how to utilize herbs and it is a good trend. I have some things that I'm like slightly nervous about with it trending, obviously, because we also have to care for the plants so they don't go extinct, because that is a thing, and humans can definitely over harvest and definitely look at it as like a monetary way of, or just like a way of like a capitalistic way to create money for themselves and not considering the benefit, the well-being of the plants. But it is a very good trend, especially home herbalism, like what you're into, where it's inspiring people to grow their own plants, to make their own medicine from their backyard, and to realize too that you don't need to have so many plants that are so deeply medicinal. You really can get a lot of medicine from, the simple ones that you can grow in your backyard, which is pretty inspiring for beginner herbalists to realize that it can be so simple and fun.
Yeah, absolutely. My little herb garden is growing and I'm just,
I see it. It looks so
loving
good. Yeah. And that's the best part, just like those simple connections daily to these plants and like creating this relationship with them is more so what it's about,
Yeah. And I think also us taking our health back, like realizing that there are, like if we're doing little things every day to care for our health, versus waiting till something is like a huge issue and then going to Western medicine for pharmaceuticals or surgeries or whatever. It's like we have a way to be daily nourishing ourselves instead of waiting till there's like this massive deficit in our health. Also, I feel that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, that playing with the herbs and being connected with the herbs has a way of tuning me into what's going on in my own body. It's like when I wake up in the morning and I'm making my tea, for example, it's like, what's going on? What does my body need? And it's sort of like a gateway into becoming more self-aware and like taking care of yourself instead of outsourcing your health to someone else.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. And I think when you're beginning, that can also feel overwhelming of like, what is my body trying to tell me? And not a lot of people are really in tune to those signals. So that can feel like a lot trying to navigate what they need. And I think that's why it is easier to go to somebody else, because it's hard to gauge what your body's telling you. And so I think that, starting to establish that trust within yourself is really important. And I think through connecting to the plants consistently, you start to create, like I said, like create this relationship and open up to this space of healing that naturally occurs just by spending time with them. And then throughout time, I think that that can definitely develop, and that relationship with yourself too, through connecting to the plants, in my opinion, at least. And everybody has their own journey of how they navigate what they connect to and how they feel drawn to plants and themselves and the unfolding. But just thinking about like the beginner context, it can definitely be a lot, trying to navigate all of that, really overwhelming.
Totally. Yeah.
But fun, a fun path to step into. And
right. Yeah. And I think it can be simple to just kind of ask yourself, like, what are the areas of my health that could use support? Like for me, it's been digestion for the last 10 or so years. So I can go to herbs like peppermint or ginger or chamomile, and so many other, basic ones that I can use readily. I can use them in so many forms. I can use them in teas. I can use essential oils. I can do herbal oils. Like there's so many different ways that we can use these simple herbs that we could just find at the grocery store or the local nursery and grow ourselves. So just, for those listening, if you do feel like what Haylee was saying, a little bit overwhelmed about like, where do I begin? I want to start listening to my body. I want to start using plants. Just check in, like, what is it that you need? Is it digestive? Is it maybe anxiety? There are so many beautiful, like adaptogenic herbs or nervine herbs that you could look into that are quite simple and easy to find. So yeah, just check in with like, where in your body do you want support? And looking up, doing a little Google search or finding an herbal book and finding some herbs that don't intimidate you, right? Like start with something that feels
familiar.
Yeah. And start there.
Yeah, I agree. And having patience too is really important. I think as people navigate healing themselves and journaling, taking simple steps because a lot of herbs don't work the same in everybody's body, right? So something might make one person feel really relaxed and help ease their anxiety, while it might increase somebody else's anxieties. And throughout that process of doing it yourself and journaling and keeping track and navigating, you start to learn more about your body, and you start to learn more about what works with it and what doesn't.
I'd love to hear, because I don't actually think we've ever had this conversation. When did you begin playing with herbs? Like, how did they come into your life? How did that start? Like, I don't think we ever talked about that. And so I'm genuinely curious.
Definitely as a kid, always played in the kitchen. My mom gave me a play school kitchen. So I always put the spices in my little pot, like the pretend spices on this picture, which is like my favorite thing. I remember playing with that thing as often as I possibly could. And then once I could help in the kitchen, I was always in the kitchen with my mom. And out in nature, just always so fascinated by the flowers. I remember the buttercup flowers that grow in Vermont, and like putting them up against my chin, other people's chin, to see if they like butter. Because if it glowed yellow, it meant you liked butter. And I was always loving that. Like the Indian paintbrushes, these like red flowers in Vermont, like put them on your arm. And like, I just pretended that I was like, somebody who lived off the land and could make tattoos on my body with these plants. So always in love with the plant world and making potions. It would take mud and sticks and leaves and make potions and try to give them to my mom. And like, so there's tons of ways that I've always connected to the natural world. And I think that's so common with children. You just connect, especially if you have the opportunity to grow up in a place where you're immersed in nature, which I did. So that was my play form. I mean, really my whole life. But I would say when I really dove in was when I was like 19 or 20, and I went through like a healing. Really, it was just my beginning of my path. But at that time, my body just became more sensitive to certain foods. So I had to start really paying attention to what I was eating and learn to trust my body, and had to cut out a lot of like gluten and, certain foods that were just making me feel like crap. And so I really learned to listen to my body versus everybody else. The doctors said I was fine. And, classic, I think like wounded healer story, like everybody said I was fine, like making this up or whatever, but really it wasn't. And then that's where I found like refuge in herbalism and alternative health, all of the things. I got really into Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, deep into herbalism. They had free classes at this co-op in Burlington when I was going to school. And so I would attend like all the free herbal classes that I could. Rosemary's husband is my dad's good friend. So I've known her for a while. And so she gave me a book around that time and was like, this is for you, And so I remember reading it and trying like all of these things in her book and like really just like reading it as much as I possibly could, but I felt so overwhelmed, which I'm loving that you're diving into herbalism, because although it was familiar and although my soul felt deeply connected to this way of being, I was like, you know what, it just took a while for the information of these herbs to like integrate for me to understand it and grasp what they really did in the body. And even really understanding what I needed to do for my own health was really challenging for me, you know. So I was always seeing different people, navigating different practitioners, going to chiropractors, going to acupuncturists. Like, you know, I really worked with a lot of different alternative medicine people and herbalists, just to get some help and support with how to integrate the medicine into my body properly. And then Rosemary's was like a deep dive. And that was 7 years ago, where we studied on her mountain for 6 months. And that's where we did like every aspect of diving into how to make medicines and how to sit with plants. And I would just tell her what we wanted to learn. And then she would give us a slew of information or connect us to different teachers where we could dive deeper into what we wanted to learn. And then every day we took care of her garden. So we worked with the plants, sat with the plants, tended to them, watched them grow from, you know, babies to full grown by the fall. And just a really different way of connecting to plants consistently that I'd never experienced before. And so that was extremely transformative. And really, I would say that catapulted me onto this path of understanding the importance of it and understanding why I wanted to get into it on a deeper level and why it was for me, versus before it was kind of just something I did. And now it's like, oh no, this is my lifestyle. Like this is me. So.
Yum. I love that. Thank you for sharing. There's so many things about that I want to ask you. First, I want to ask you, what book did she give you? Was it her book or what book?
It was her book, Family Herbal.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And is that something you would recommend for people?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's a good one. Another really good one is her beginner's guide. It's medicinal herbs, a beginner's guide. But the beginner's guide is very simple to read, like one recipe of how to integrate it into your day. And I recommend that one from Rosemary.
I'm also wondering, like you mentioned sort of at the beginning, you felt the resonance of working with the plants and working with the herbs, but you also felt overwhelmed of like, whoa, this is so much, like, where do I begin? I'm curious what you did do from there. Was there something that you did to sort of break it down for yourself, or was it just sort of that way for years until you went to Rosemary and had that experience?
I remember buying a lemon balm plant when I was first learning. So that was the first plant that I purchased to have on hand to work with. So I did buy plants here and there. Henna was really interesting one time. So a friend of mine, and she has a ton of stuff about henna in there. So we bought henna and did that. If the herb felt semi-similar, or if it was like a repetitive herb, then that is what I would integrate. Lemon balm came up a few times. I remember different classes I was taking. And so I felt comfortable buying that herb because it had come up repetitively and there's some resonance with that plant. There's a familiarity that had to come into play before I purchased the herb or even tried it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great advice, right? Is to like, because I have a video on how not, herbalism for beginners, how not to poison yourself, because I had a woman who commented on my channel, on one of my videos, like, hey, I really want to work with herbs, but I'm scared I'm going to poison myself. And I'm like, okay, that's a legitimate fear, you know? So what I recommended to her was, you know, find herbs that you recognize, right? Like ginger, for example, you're not going to overdose yourself on ginger. Like, you know, if you've had too much ginger is something that you're familiar with. So I think that's a good thing that I just want to sort of highlight here is like, if you are feeling overwhelmed, again, just find plants that you feel familiar with, and they probably have way more medicinal uses than you realize. You know, like rosemary, for example, you're using rosemary for cooking, but it has so many other uses, right? It's like helps with circulation, like all these different things. So dive deeper then into herbs that you already know, or herbs that are calling to you, or herbs that you're familiar with.
Yeah. And that actually brings up a good point. Exactly. I always forget about kitchen medicines, even though I'm a chef. It's so funny. I think of like more of the medicinal plants when I talk about herbs. But yes, I remember integrating cinnamon a lot and certain kitchen herbs that felt safer to me to start playing around with and understanding their medicinal properties and qualities. That's where I started. It's also recommended from like really almost every herbalist I've ever talked to dive into like pick 10 herbs and dive in deeper to them versus feeling like you have to know everything about, like, it's better to know that. And if you're really drawn to ginger, trusting that you're drawn to that for a reason. And And also going back to our conversation before about learning about what your body wants. And if that feels overwhelming, a lot of the time we're drawn to specific plants for a reason for our health, for our body. And not everybody's drawn to the same plants, right? And so just trusting that for whatever reason you like ginger, that's what your body is requiring for some medicinal benefit on some level. And like I said, picking like 10 plants that you seem to just be curious about, and then deep diving into those and learning more about the medicinal qualities.
I want to also ask you about plant spirit medicine, because I know we had talked about this before. I know you host like a weekly class or meditation. Circling back to what you said about being at Rosemary's, and you shared with me before that you would just sit with the plant and just like sort of receive what its medicine was just through being with it. So I'd love for you to tap into plant spirit medicine and just all of that, and yeah, just inject some of that magic into our conversation for people.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm obsessed with plant spirit medicine and have been for a long time. And it's really nice that there's more teachers that are really deep diving into it to teach us how to do it properly. We also don't even really need teachers. We can just do it ourselves, which is so inspiring as well. And the best part about that is you don't have to ingest it. So if you're worried about, a plant impacting your body negatively, you can just spend time with it. And so I learned about elder. I learned about how elder can like impact the integrity of our cells. When I first did this journey, or when I first sat with plants, like intentionally, when I was studying with Rosemary, we sat with elder, and there was like this very colorful journey where I was like brought down this like winding path into our veins and our system. And I learned about the integrity of how it helps the integrity of our cellular system. And it was insane, the things that I was shown and taught, and had no cognitive knowing about this at all. And the teacher, when we shared our experiences with each plant, she asked if I had known this information prior to reading, and I didn't. And so that really inspired me to continue to show that this is real and that we can learn so much from these plants. And this is how the shamans used to do it, right? I mean, I don't think that every plant had to be ingested and somebody would die to figure it out, because there's so much information there that you can learn about the medicinal qualities of the plant. And so without having to ingest it. And really what it is, it's your relationship with it. So, for instance, like for you, having your plants outside, just spending time with them is establishing this relationship with your plants. And people can do it without having a garden. They can go sit with trees, and they can go, anywhere, and just opening their heart to this plant allows that relationship to take place. It's super simple, and it just takes time, and openness to it.
So for people who are interested in trying this, can you break it down a little bit? Like, I know you mentioned, is this like you kind of going into a meditative space with the plant? You said opening your heart. Can you talk a little bit about like, if someone wanted to try this, what would they do?
Getting your body relaxed. So yeah, meditative space, or for beginners, if that's like, if meditating isn't a common practice, then really just like relaxing and essentially opening your heart. So just getting yourself into your heart, which can happen through different methods. It's either igniting like a sense of love or gratitude, something that brings your heart into a space where you feel all of these feelings of elated emotions. And then that brings you into like a coherent space with the plant. And then through there, you can communicate with the plant. You can ask it questions. You can receive a healing. You can just navigate what its medicine is. You can feel what its medicine is. You kind of just observe your body, and you observe how your body feels and what is being picked up by sitting with this plant. And essentially it's in your heart, which is where we need to be living anyways, like the place we need to be living from. And we're so focused on living from our brain that is so disconnecting from living in this coherent state, similar to, feeling so good in nature. I mean, what does nature naturally do? It opens our heart. We're naturally in that space of awe and wonderment and observing beauty. So it already gets us into that spot. And now it's just more intentionally sitting with the plant and feeling anything that shifts in our body. I think that's the best way to start, is taking away the communicative part, like taking away, because that can feel intimidating. Like that can feel like, am I really feeling this? What are they saying? People can get in their own way. So I'd say for beginners, just really sitting with anything that they want to learn from and just being open to, or just observing their body changes. That's it. Let's say you can actually do it with a cup of tea. You don't have to be outside. So if you're in the city and you don't have a place where you can really sit with plants, or you don't have time to go outside and sit with a plant, you can sit with a cup of tea, a single herb tea, and it can be mint, chamomile, little anything that you have on hand, green tea, whatever you want, ginger, and you do the similar thing where you just kind of hold the cup of tea in your hand and just relax your body. And just as you drink it, just feel how your body changes and just coming into that subtle body experience where you're just tuning into the shifts in your system. And it's so easy. And then you can move forward from there, deepening it. But that's a really good place to start.
Could you do it even if you're not physically with the plant? Like for me, the plant that I have the strongest connection to feels like chamomile. And if I just tune into chamomile, I have like this like joyful, like lightness in my heart. Like I can tap into the energy of what my relationship feels like with the plant without being necessarily with it. So yeah, I was just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, definitely. All the time. You don't have to be with it at all. And that's it, like just that feeling of joy and that feeling that it brings to you when you think about it, that's the initial shift in your consciousness. And as you dive deeper, if you want to really, connect more to chamomile, then you can just continue that process with it. You spend more time in meditative state, imagining chamomile, allowing it to shift your body, seeing what happens.
I would love for you to share a little bit about your relationship with cacao, because I know that's been a really, really strong relationship. And I would love to hear about like how you became connected with cacao and what you think it would be cool for people to know about cacao. I know you've had many beautiful experiences and done ceremonies and gone to Guatemala and stuff. So what would you want to share about that?
Yeah, cacao was definitely one of my first plant allies. A friend of mine, when I was working in a cafe, I think it was in 2012 or maybe 2013, I met a friend who was working with cacao making herbal drinks. And so I took a little sip of it and it had cinnamon in it, which I'm allergic to. So I couldn't drink a lot, but I felt this expanded state that I'd never experienced before. So that shift in consciousness with just the tiniest amount, I was blown away by and knew that I had to work with it and knew that it was a plant that I had to establish a deeper relationship with. So I got more into making cacao, making those chocolates, the herbal chocolates. He really inspired me to do the herbal chocolates in particular because he was also an herbalist. So I hired him to help teach me how to make chocolates, started my company, and got deeply into working with it consistently. And then randomly found like a Peruvian shaman who was leading a cacao ceremony in Lucadia in like a little yurt one day. And I was like, cacao, like this is coming in, I'm like, oh my God, I would love to go to this. I don't know what it's about, but like a shaman with cacao, 100% I'm there. So I went in and we did like drumming and all of these different things to kind of shift our vibration, and then like laid down and just breathed and drank cacao in the beginning of it all. And same thing, it was like this expanded state of consciousness that I was like, I don't know how else to reach this state. Like, this is just insane how this happens so quickly with this plant and easily. And so felt very inspired by that and started just gathering people to drink this plant and to tune into the spirit of it. And so that's kind of like my beginning path of that, and like just continuously working with it and creating more chocolates and more products. And then through that, cacao has brought me to different places in the world, to the Dominican Republic, which is where I actually sat with the plant itself, the tree itself, and was able to connect with the spirit, which was like, it's like almost like going to see like your, not guru, but kinda. It's like, I felt like I was like in like I was like, oh my God, it's cacao. Like I was like, I've been working with you for so long, It was like, it's almost like if you see a famous person that you're like, I've been watching you since I was a child and you're here. Like that's how I felt. And it was really cool to have the opportunity to sit with the spirit and to learn from it and to talk with it. Yeah, then now I go to Guatemala and talk with Donna Marina. I have a relationship with Donna Marina and the Tatas and her family, and they make the cacao that I get. And so they're of the Mayan lineage. And so I really appreciate honoring the lineage that cacao comes from and the fact that they've had, and same thing with meeting them. I was like, oh my God, I've read about you guys for so long. Like, this is insane. You know, like teaching classes about cacao and talking about the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Olmecs and like how they would use it for currency and just like the traditional aspect of this sacred plant, and then meeting the people who have carried it for so long. It was absolutely insane. And so, yeah, now I get my cacao from them, which just feels really good to honor them. And, you know, I don't work with it as consistently ingesting it as I used to. It used to be more of like a daily thing. And now it's kind of like once in a while when it calls to me, I'll drink it, which I also want to inspire people to do that too. You know, you don't always have to consume things all the time to have a relationship and connection with them. And just a reminder to like listen to the plant when it calls to you, you know, and just trusting that that's the time to drink it or to consume it or work with it. And it goes through phases. You know, there's times where you're deeply involved in one thing. And then, you know, for you, maybe chamomile won't be as inspiring and exciting next year. Who knows? You know, it's kind of just like trusting that process with it all.
I love that you keep referencing, you know, the spirit of the plant. And that could be something that's really new for people that are listening. And I love it. I was talking about this with my other friend who's on a podcast, I think episode 8, Samantha, and we were talking about holistic health and how our health is like this whole picture of who we are. It's not just like facts and statistics about our body, like our weight and our blood pressure and all these different things, right? It's like, that's just so like linear, and there's so much more to us as beings. And just like there's so much more to us as beings, there's so much more to plants. They're not just like a carminative or a nutritive or what, you know what I mean? There's these like more scientific things and things that they do, but then there's also the spirit and the essence and, you know, like the energy, you know, the personality of the plant. So it's beautiful to wind those two together. And so I'm glad that we're having this conversation, that we're bringing this into more people's awareness too, because I think this is really another level of connecting with the earth and connecting with plants that for me adds just so much extra joy to the experience.
Me too. Oh my God, so much more joy. And I am way more, I mean, I'm both. I like the scientific and I really love the magic. So I love diving into, it's like the first half of my day is like when I do all of my research and I do my scientific articles and I do all of that type of work. And the second half is like the natural, like diving into this plant spirit, diving into the other realms, because both are equally important in my life and like carving out, you know, and I think it's equally important for all of our lives, you know, having scientific proof that something's happening and the studies to make sure that it's of benefit for our body to ingest things, right? It's like, it's important to see what's happening in our systems and to dive into that aspect of it as well. But then the spirit and the other essence that we can't see, the intangible, it makes it really just fun and magical. And
in so many ways in our culture, we just do the scientific side of things. And like, for me, like you said, it's good and it's important and it's helpful and it has its value. And like, where's like the juiciness, right? Like the creativity, that feminine essence, that other side that isn't explainable through the scientific method. There are all these different ways, like we can look into the spirit of it. We can look into like the magical associations of it. We can look into the planetary associations of it, or even the elemental associations. So there's so many different aspects of this spirit side that we're talking about. And you can just go so deep into it.
Oh, forever.
So there.
It's so much all the time. Yeah. Any pathway you want to connect with plants on, it's there.
We kind of talked about this already, but I'm curious if you have anything else to say on this. For people that are interested and feeling the call to work with plants, feeling the call to work with herbs and make their own medicine, but they're feeling intimidated, overwhelmed, you know, we did mention a couple things, but curious if you have any other like advice or places where you would recommend people start if they're wanting to get started.
Yeah, I think making teas are the best place to start. Just a simple infusion where, you know, if you buy a tea from a tea bag, or if you grow your own herbs, a lot of people have a misconception that tea needs to be dried, but the fresh plant's the best. So I would say if you feel inspired to get a fresh plant, even if you can grow one in your windowsill, then making infusion that way. That's the easiest and most beneficial way to connect to a lot of the elements that the plant has. You get the flavors, the smells, you know, you can tune into the subtleties. You can make it a really strong tea. You can make it a really light teas. You can like really work with different dynamics of it. And even for instance, with chamomile, if you steep it for a short amount of time, then it's more of the relaxing effect versus if you steep it for a long amount of time, it's more of the bitter digestive effect. So there's different components to plants based on just their steeping length, which is amazing. And that's a familiar way that I would just say starting with that is the easiest. And can be a very deep experience as well. And if you wanted to connect more with the spirit of the plant in the cup of tea, you would make a much lighter extraction. So you'd put less of the plant in the cup of tea. So you are tuning more, that is more of like a homeopathic remedy. It's more of the subtle body connection, more of like the vibrational standpoint. There we go. The vibration of the plant rather than the physical. When there's more plant material, it's more of the physical body. So you can kind of play around with that, tuning into your physical body and then tuning into the spirit of it with less of an infusion and see how that shifts and how you can create a relationship that way.
And it's also a good way to just familiarize yourself with something too, just to start slow and figure out how much you do like of something.
Exactly. And just pick one plant, just pick one and work with it for like a month, take some time, drink it as often as you can. And then also learning about it, if you like how you're doing with chamomile, you're reading about it in different books, reading about the magical aspects. So if you're interested in the planetary aspects, you would research if they're like what it's ruled by, or like what you are interested in the magical, reading about, and then integrating it. And I think, and it's uncomfortable at first. Integration can be uncomfortable, especially with like magical spells or things that you're like, I don't know how to do this, but my soul does. So I kind of feel comfortable. I'm drawn to it, so I think just like trusting yourself and playing with it and making it fun. I think that's also a really important part, is just making it light and playful. And you're not going to do it wrong. You're not going to do anything wrong. Unless if you like put a hex on somebody, that's not okay. That's in the magical. But it's like, I think it's like just, starting with a simple herb that's common and making it fun and playful and immersing yourself in it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your wisdom and sharing your path. Well, just for everybody listening, I'm going to put all of Haylee's contact information in the show notes, her Instagram, and how you can contact her if you want to connect. Tell us about your weekly classes.
Yeah. So I posted that mostly on Meetup, and I do post on Instagram once in a while, but that's kind of the best way to find a lot of my offerings actually. And every Thursday night, it's an hour. So my meditation's an hour. So it's super easy. It's on Zoom, and a lot of people on Meetup are from everywhere. So that's like the easiest way for me to connect with people. And it's at night. So it's kind of a way to just like wind down after the long day, relax, let go of the day and connect with any plant that you want through a cup of tea. So it's super basic and simple, really fun. And then I'm starting to do different series classes on Saturdays. But right now I'm teaching just beginner herbalism stuff, how to integrate and implement these concepts into your life and how to easily just feel less intimidated by it, essentially. So along the same lines of what you're talking about. And then shifting more into vibrational medicine and spirit medicine and stuff like that down the road. But right now it's all just very beginner.
Okay, awesome. So we'll leave the links to all that below.
Yeah.
And also, if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel yet, Homebody with Erinn, remember Erinn has 2 N's, and I have a lot of super basic beginner herbalism videos there and recipes and different natural remedies that you can make at home, and just some tips to how to get started without, dealing with the overwhelm, and just starting with basic herbs that you feel comfortable with at your grocery store, etc. So I'll put the link to that in the show notes. And then on my Instagram is @Erinn with 2 N's if you want to come say hi there. Thank you, Haylee, for being here and sharing about your path and your joy for the plants and your wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome.
Yeah. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next time on the next episode. New episodes drop on Tuesday, so be sure to follow and hit the bell if you want to get notified when that happens. Lots of love. Bye.